First day with no classes and no homework. It's time to work on something fun. So I'm just gonna work on my office, since now that I'm not doing homework, I can take the computer and everything, take my desk apart and move things around. So I'm gonna go find things that I can decorate with from all the stuff that I already have. I knew I wanted some sort of a moody room, and here are some of my inspiration photos. It's not going to be exactly like this because I want to use vintage items that I already have. Here is the entry to that guest bedroom that I want to redo. This is the doors that we recently installed. So there is nothing really special about this room. It is painted that sage green color that we had throughout the house, but I'm ready for a change, and so we're just going to start painting it and see where we go from there. We went with the color Salamander from Benjamin Moore because it is a matte ceramic paint. I chose the Regal Select line. You can read more about it here if you want to pause the video. But it is a La Vie paint with ceramic particles, so you can scrub it to clean it, and it is a matte finish. It's a little bit pricier, but I think it's worth it. I'm doing the second coat, and when you first put it on, it looks a little bit more blue. But as it dries, it starts turning more of that really dark, rich green, almost black, and I am loving it. The main thing I wanted to use is this old vintage mirror that my father-in-law brought from his 100-year-old house up in Tennessee, and I knew I loved it just the way it is with all its imperfections, and so it was gonna be, everything was gonna be centered around this essentially, and I wanted to go in a vintage way but also a little bit more eclectic, if that makes any sense. Stop by the thrift store and try and find like vintage art. I don't know what I can find, but that way I can come back and place them on the frames and see what I have and what I need to actually DIY, so I kind of know my direction. So that's what we're gonna do first. Since I wasn't finding the kind of artwork that I was looking for or vintage images, I moved on to the book section in the hopes of finding an old vintage book that I could have some images to use. And I flipped through a couple, and then I found this book from the moon landing, and it was actually printed in 1969. So it is exactly what I was looking for, the same style, kind of like that retro vintage, because it truly is vintage. And the images are from the Smithsonian. So everything about this book was exactly what I needed. Always buy my mat board, because if you look at the individual mats, and particularly the larger one, you'll see that each of them is about $9 plus the cost of frame and the cost of the artwork if you are buying the stuff. So it can add up quickly for a gallery wall, and so I prefer to buy the mat board and cut it myself to the size that I need, and I know that I'll have extra and I will have exactly the colors that I want and the sizes that I want. So each of these mat boards is $12.99 at my local craft store. I picked out 4 colors, and so now I have to cut them to size and start putting them together. You can buy a mat cutter online. I think mine was about $25, and between the gallery wall and the living room and this gallery wall, it already has more than paid for itself, and so has the mat board. So to me it is cheaper, but if you're not going to be using a lot of it, then just buy the mats by themselves. book at the thrift store, and I picked it up because it had a few empty pages, and I loved how the paper is actually old and vintage. It looks like it is really thick, and since I needed a couple more images, I wanted to print something just different, maybe a placeholder until I find some more vintage pictures or something better. But for now, I just made it to the size of a regular letter size paper and printed something for myself, and then I framed. Once I have all my images printed and framed, I laid them on the floor in front of the wall that I was going to use to kind of figure out the placement. And because it is a random wall with different shapes, I wasn't too concerned about measuring and everything being perfect, but I did want it to be centered, so I marked the center and I went from there. Corey found this furniture on Nextdoor Neighbor, which is an app for the neighborhood. It was a 3-piece set, and it is the perfect width and height for storing a lot of my stuff. And you guys know that I like upcycling and using secondhand before I buy anything new, so this worked out perfect. And the last little DIY is that I needed to turn this planter pot from white to black, and I used mineral paint as per usual to paint it because it absorbs into porous surfaces really well, and I needed it to match my dark and moody decor. That is it for today, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video and it gave you some ideas on how you can redecorate your house using things that you already have or things that you can upcycle or make over so that it is uniquely your own. Don't forget to follow and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Okay, love you, bye!